All right, welcome back to another episode of EventHubs Talking Block. I am John Catalyst Green. With me, as always, is John Velociraptor Guerrero.
We got some some really exciting new Street Fighter 6 news. There is so much to go through. It might feel a little bit overwhelming, but that's what we're here for, to take you guys through it, to show you all the cool stuff that you might have missed and appreciate it all. And we should start here with the 4 new old characters that were revealed today. And I think the most maybe anticipated of those was Ken Masters. Is he homeless? Why is he wearing that hobo gear? What's going on with Ken right now? Is he still doing flaming uppercuts and crazy kicks? Yes. John, what are your first reactions to Ken showing up in Street Fighter 6?
Yeah, I mean, what did Capcom say here about Ken? That he did some kind of like criminal plot, and he's basically forced
accused.
Yeah, and he's had to abandon his family and his business. And I mean, Ken is very rich and all this other kind of stuff, so quite interesting what they're doing with him. And so Hobo Ken is not exactly off base here. And then Ruben Langdon, who's voiced Ken for quite some time, he's not back anymore. We have a brand new voice actor, which is actually quite common here. Very few returning voice actors that we've been seeing so far. Ryu is returning, a few others, but a lot of the Critical Role people who used to work on the game, they're no longer there. But getting into Ken's gameplay, what's really interesting right now about this is that Capcom is bringing back a lot of the moves we've seen in prior games, and Ken looks to have like his crazy kicks from Super Turbo. And but also we're seeing stuff like his V skills and maybe even V triggers are going to be coming back. So you got right away his standard Fireball, DP, and Hurricane kick, but he's also got the Jinrei kick, which is a forward-moving roundhouse that can be followed up with 3 different options, and they reflect Ken's quest to clear his name. I don't know how exactly that works, why the 3 follow-ups work that way, but this is Capcom we're talking about here. So right away, Ken looks very flashy. He looks extremely high damage. He definitely is separating himself from that Ryu mold even further, it looks like, in this game.
There's a lot that we don't know yet, but you do see some things that are straight out of the Ken playbook. For instance, when Ryu does his Tatsu is usually different from Ken's in that it knocks down. Sure enough, that's what happens in Street Fighter 6. We see Ken's go off in this trailer, and it does not knock down, it just hits multiple times, a very Ken-like thing. His iconic super from Street Fighter 3, the Shippu Jinrai Kyaku, I believe is back in this, where he does, I think it's like 4 hits, and then he does a Goken Tatsu and goes straight up in the air and hits you for more. The end of moment 37. A lot of familiar stuff, but again, packaged in maybe a different way. And I think you were kind of getting towards it too. A lot of what we saw develop in Street Fighter V and incorporated into the V system, the different V skills, the different V triggers, are coming back as just sort of standard special moves for the characters here in Street Fighter 6. And I believe they messaged a little bit about that with Ken as well, right? That, his Dragon Slash kick and Sprint from Street Fighter V are also now special moves rather than V skills. So right there, we talked about Street Fighter 5.5. This is sort of attesting to that a little bit more. It's starting to feel that way. Now,
people don't want to hear that, but and this is what I keep saying. Now, I want to be careful with that statement, because again, I also say that that's still half of a brand new game here, and that is very clear in this, that there's a ton of new stuff in this game, and it's going to play. We have no idea how this game is going to play. Let me say it that way. We don't know what the meta is going to be. We don't know what's going to evolve. There's so much going on here that we are unaware of, but there is a good amount of carryover here from 5 as well.
And I think that I'm not a huge fan of Street Fighter V within the scope of Street Fighter games, but even thinking about that and saying Street Fighter 5.5, that doesn't make me too nervous, because it really does come down to the flow, the pace. What kinds of things are better in this game? Are projectiles way better? That's going to change so much about everything else that happens. So to say it's going to feel exactly or flow exactly like Street Fighter V, no. I think you're going to see a lot of the same types of moves, but they might not be implemented in the same way at all. And that's really true for Street Fighter over the years. We've seen almost all of these attacks in older Street Fighter games, and every single one of them still feels different. So I'm not too worried about that, and I don't think you should be either.
Yeah, actually, speaking of that, I want to talk about Dhalsim, because one of the things that happens with him is that he does a stand heavy kick, and then he cancels into drive rush, and then he's able to continue the combo. That seems incredibly good to give a character like Dhalsim that kind of range, and then to be able to combo after that. And what I'm getting at with that is, like, that is, we've never seen that from Dhalsim before, And the fact that that exists and is a baked in part of his gameplay means that there's going to be quite a bit of new and fresh stuff we're not used to. And I mean, Dhalsim's usually good in these games. He's usually one of the better characters. That's not uncommon at all. And
3 years in, when people finally figure him out, but yeah.
So I mean, there's so much that's going on here that we just don't know about yet, and stuff like that looks just completely broken and would be in other games may not be broken in this game, because it's like, okay, well, how much zoning can you actually even do in this game? We don't even know that yet. And we came from a Street Fighter V background where zoning is pretty much laughably bad, pretty much across the board. So
yeah, that Dhalsim sequence that I think you're referencing there, that pops up in the trailer, it looks like, how Ryu's might play footsies with low forward from, low forward distance, and then if you catch one, you can confirm into, a bigger combo. This looks like Dhalsim playing almost that style of footsies, but with Dhalsim limbs. And if he catches you, so Street Fighter V, if he's doing, is it the medium kick where he just kicks it way out at your shins from really far away, he might be able to confirm that and then FAD drive rush cancel forward into a full combo. That, like you're saying, is terrifying if that's the case, but we don't know what everybody else is capable of in this and such. But yeah, that right off the bat, we're all like, I hope that does 10 damage, because and it would cost something like 5 bars of drive rush gauge plus a super in the sequence that we see him do there, because he cancels out of a normal and then he goes into an EX move. So right there, that's 5. We'll see, but some really cool stuff. And hey, high action, explosive craziness. Dhalsim also lost his little child skulls that he had on his chest. I think those are gone for maybe the first time ever in his standard appearance. I think he's always gotten those skulls. But some updates. And I also think that of these 4 characters revealed, I think Dhalsim looks the best. That's just my opinion. But of all 4 of them, and then not the other ones don't look terrible, but Dhalsim looks pretty good.
Blanka looks terrible, but we'll get into that here in a second. Oh my goodness, they gave him a mullet. But anyway, so staying with Dhalsim though, one of the things about it, like his standing heavy kick and going into the drive rush, right now we know with drive rush that your normals have to be cancelable. And it's like, okay, why would they make that move cancelable? That seems busted beyond belief. And it might be something that they're kind of showcasing here in the trailer, showcasing early on. And they're like, oh yeah, that's not going in the final game. There's no way. Because I mean, giving Dhalsim cancelable limbs from max distance, I mean, it just seems broken. So some of this stuff that surfaces is kind of like a showcasing of a character in other opportunities. And it's not going to make it into the actual game when it comes out.
Well, and the other stuff that we're seeing from him is he's shooting fireballs at just about every which way angle.
That he has,
and some of it looks like his buffed bouncy fireballs from Street Fighter V. And but at one point he shoots one over the top of his opponent and it hits the ground and then it bounces back at her. So if Dhalsim is able to confirm from half screen away into full combos, but at the same time is able to put basically like fireball and angled fireballs, he can do it down from in the air, he can shoot them straight across, or he can do the rainbows that he's been doing in Street Fighter V. He seems to have all of that, and sometimes they can bounce. This is already the matter-of-fact top tier in my mind right now with just those 2 things. And again, we don't know what this all is going to mean within the context of the actual game and the other characters, but that looks like some pretty powerful stuff, especially when you consider how they're going to work together. Full screen confirms, half screen confirms, plus crazy fireball bullet hell Dhalsim. What?
You actually missed one. He has an air fireball now that travels at a down angle. Think of like Guile's V skill 2, his air sonic boom, how it flies up that down angle. And and then he also brings back the Yoga Flame, the Yoga Gale, the Yoga Comet is the one I just mentioned. That's the air fireball. I mean, and then Capcom also mentioned he has his teleport and float abilities. And again, get used to people having basically all their moves from as many prior games as you can get in there, because it's very clearly Capcom's MO at this point in time to bring back as many of these move sets as they can, so that fans are not disappointed when characters come out and they just completely are missing moves that people expect them to have.
Yeah, and I think they're also really trying to avoid the problem in SF5 where when it first released, everyone said you play all of these characters in the exact same way and you couldn't tell who's behind the sticks, given any particular character up on the screen. And there's so many variations. Not only does there a bigger wealth of moves per character, it seems, in this game, but you can also do like variations of moves and choose like a certain path, or like there's maybe a stance that has like 3 different resolutions to it, or I think Honda, which we'll get into, has something like that, and a couple of the different characters do as well. So they are really trying to make sure that even Dhalsim players or even Honda players in general can distinguish themselves from each other, and you can tell just by looking at the screen that somebody is playing versus somebody else. There's a lot of versatility in these characters, at least it seems that way so far.
Yeah, I'm really curious how this game is going to evolve. And the fact of like, okay, you've got the Swiss Army knife of tools for every character now, right? Because if everyone's V skill is back and most of the V triggers are back and all this other kind of stuff, you literally have a Swiss Army knife of tools for every character, which is very unlike Street Fighter. We've never really had that option before. And so how is that balanced? And I'm wondering if we're missing a big part of the meta here, where there are very clear drawbacks to, we know about burnout, we know about all this other kind of stuff, but I wonder if there's some very clear drawbacks where maybe every special in the game is negative on block or something like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, you've got all those specials, but you know what? Every single one of those is negative, and you're punished if you do it wrong. So yeah, you can use it, but you better use it right. And I wonder if they're going to, dial up some of the hardcore intensity in this game because of that. I mean, again, when you look at a move list and you're doing the Tekken thing where it's like 700 moves, that's intimidating. I don't think that's going to be the case with Street Fighter V. Very clearly not. But also, 12 special moves. Some characters look like they have that, and that's intimidating for some people.
For sure. Well, one of the first things I can say about that is that the way people were saying you can master Street Fighter V in all of 2 hours, or maybe it's more like you can master a character or basically know all of what a character can do. That does not look like it's going to be the case in Street Fighter 6. You might spend 2-3 days plus figuring that kind of stuff of actual in-game time. And but the other thing about it is, so are you saying that if they were to go the route of making specials not as usable, therefore maybe you have to use them as an anti-air, or you have to use them when they're in the middle of a combo or as a very specific punish, as opposed to what we see a lot in Street Fighter V, where Birdie or Urien or Bison are going to use a horizontal quick moving special move that leaves them sometimes plus, or at the very least not punishable, and therefore they're not playing as much neutral they're not playing as much footsies because, well, hey, I'll just use my special moves to navigate the neutral, and it's like a lot more reward without as much risk. With as many specials are in this game, I would really hope that that's what they're doing. It's like, yes, use them in their specific spots, and there's a lot to do, but you need to play footsies, and you need to play more nuanced in the neutral to like engage and get stuff going, and then they can enhance once you've earned a hit. That's best case scenario for me thus far, and it sounds like that's basically what you're getting at too.
That would be my hope, but I do know that the developers have said that they are trying not to limit options in this game. They want to throw the kitchen sink at the players and let them decide how to play the game. So that would be my hope, is that like if you're giving people this many ways, this many options to go through, that the drawbacks are going to be readily apparent too. Because if you make characters without weaknesses, you make Luke, and that's not good.
Yeah, and they just did that. And they put him in this game. Yeah. So there's a lot of promise that they've been updating a lot of the issues that they've had in the past. But so their most recent example in Street Fighter V was a character where they did not rectify what we're talking about here. So I'm a little nervous that they might not do that in Street Fighter 6, and then we'll just have like, well, there's this totally nuanced, intricate game you could play, or Honda Headbutt. Yeah. And I hope it's not that.
Well, it's the vanilla release of a game, and there's a fairly large launch roster coming. I think looks like about 24 characters or so, yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. One thing I also want to note on this before we move on is that Street Fighter 6 is very much like 5 with the combo routes. And that was a larger issue in prior Street Fighter games before 5, but it looks like in this one, you won't have any shortage of viable combos to do regardless of the character you choose. Because if you played like Ken back in the day in Street Fighter 4 versus someone like Rose, like you had 50 more combos you could do with Ken, and if you played something like Guile, it's like, oh, I don't even have combos. So, it was something like that, where in 5, they pretty much fixed that across the board, where every character had viable combo routes, and it very, very, very heavily resembles that in 6. I would say even more combo crazy. So this is in some ways we're getting into Marvel territory in terms of like number of options and just number of things that you can do. And again, I don't mind that. I love Marvel as well, and again, big fan of Street Fighter V. So, but this is going to be. This is not shaping up to be a very traditional Street Fighter game at all. This is very much shaping up to be a brand new entry in very much heavily, again, leaning heavily into that esports Marvel Street Fighter V type of thing, where you have tons of options, tons of explosivity, if that's even a word, and there you go.
And it looks like the characters are, at least in part, very different from how they have traditionally been. There's a taste of it. You'll recognize them. You'll probably be able to do a few basic combos. But as we were talking about with Dhalsim, it looks like he's going to be able to do like footsie confirms from half screen and then also play bullet hell with fireballs or something along those lines. And with Blanka, he's got something brand new for his character. And I know he had he could summon like watermelon fruits to fall in Street Fighter Alpha, one of the Alpha games, and that was maybe a little bit like this. But he's got a Blanka Chan dolls because his story is that he's been trying to sell these things, and he's also a tour guide in this kind of like rainforesty area of the world they're in. But he can place these Blanka Chan dolls that because he has too many and didn't sell them all on the ground, and then hit them with an electricity move, and then they move towards the opponent as little puppets or minions that can hit them. That to me feels very different from any Blanka I've ever experienced before.
Yeah, he's also they're bringing back the Lightning Beast move, and if people don't know the name of that one, you should shudder in fear because that is his V trigger too. And so not only does he have his standard rolling attacks, which troll the hell out of you, now he has those dolls where he has to light them up with electric moves. Some kind of any of his electric moves will light up the dolls, and then the dolls will run at you and explode. So this is a really interesting version of Blanka, but typically Blanka's low tier. When he has been anything more than low tier, the complaints about the character have been rampant. So I'm not really worried about Blanka being super strong because I think Capcom kind of has him in the Dan tier, so to speak, where he's not like exactly bottomish, but he's usually fairly low. But his shenanigans, if you don't know them, will blow you up, and get used to 12 moves per character because, I mean, they're literally bringing back V triggers now as well. It's not just V skills. It's like, oh yeah, here's some V triggers as well. And not only is it a V trigger, it's maybe the scariest V trigger in Street Fighter V, are one of them with his V trigger too. It is a bonkers V trigger.
Yeah, and what's the cost for him to use this? Is he going to be able to do it every 2 seconds? I'm sure they won't do that, but
Yeah,
who knows? Does the minions, the dolls, has Blanka ever had anything like that, or is that just brand new for Blanka as far as your experience?
As you said, he had a super in Alpha. I forget which one it was, what ism had it, but basically he would shake all the trees on the stage, and it would knock fruit on the ground, and then he could knock that fruit into people. And it was more of a shenanigan as far as I remember. Maybe there were some really killer setups that some great Alpha players did, but for the most part it was a really shenanigan type of based. This one looks very legitimate.
Yeah.
And again, going back to Marvel here, like this is what kind of Marvel specializes in, where you throw a trap on the ground and then you get to mix the opponent up with it and stuff. But keep in mind, like if Blanka throws a Blanka Chan doll on the ground and then goes for electricity, just kill him when he does it. It's like, look, like that's a hella telegraphed move, a helly one too, but a hella telegraphed move. Yeah. it's you should see that coming and be able to blow it up with some time here. But just knowing that Blanka's got that as an option could be scary for some people. Doesn't bother me. It's like, look, like if you don't expect your character, your opponent's character, to have a bunch of moves that they can fall back on, like you're going to be playing the wrong game, because literally they were throwing the kitchen sink, it seems like, at almost every character here and saying, yep, here's almost all of your past moves you've ever had, go for it.
Some of those of what we've seen so far with the electrified Blanka Chan dolls, one of them I think was doing basically Blanka's Ultra 2 from Street Fighter 4, where he does that little hop and then comes forward. Maybe that was Ultra 1 actually. Yeah, it was Ultra 1. Anyways, and like it's a multi-hitting attack, and I can only imagine, he gets a sweep and then puts down one of these dolls, and on your wake up you have to deal with it, and then he's also doing some cross up or not. This looks chaotic, and not necessarily in a bad way. I have to trust that they know what they're doing with Blanka here 35 years into Street Fighter's life or so. But oh my gosh, I'm not looking forward to dealing with... I can see myself yoinking like clumps of hair out of my head playing ranked here. because
Speaking
of
of that,
goofy
that's
Blanka thing.
that looks like what they did with Blanka's design. They had him rip out parts
Yeah.
of his hair because he's got like a Blanka. This is the ugliest version of Blanka I've ever seen, and I think most people are going to default to the Blanka Chan outfit just for the amount of ugly in there. He's literally hideous. Now, Blanka's never been a good-looking character, but this is literally. He looks hideous. He looks awful. Like I can't believe how awful he looks.
He's got what, overalls on? Is that what this is? And like a kind of a mullet going on. He doesn't look great. I mean, I'm not like, oh, that's the coolest Blanka I've ever seen. It does look like there's a Blanka Chan version of him, at least in the story mode, and you got to assume that they're going to cash in on that as well as like just a standard alternate costume for him. But yeah, you're not wrong. It's not. I mean, it's right for the character in terms of being a troll. So
yeah. The amount of costumes in this game should make all other previous Street Fighter games pale in comparison. Mostly because DLC sales of costumes is a giant moneymaker for these companies, and I honestly think you're going to see probably more in the range. I think like Street Fighter 5, not counting Chun-Li, but most other characters had around the range of like 5, 6, 7 costumes or something. I think you're going to see more in the range of about 10 costumes per character, and that's going to happen fairly early in the process, I would hope at least. It's very foolish if Capcom does not do that, because it's these costumes are such a big deal. So you can get rid of ugly default Blanka, and switch over to some other version of them. But speaking
for a
of
price.
Speaking of ugly, Honda kind of has a little bit of ugliness going on here. He no longer has his six-pack, despite, being like a sumo wrestler and like 300 pounds or whatever. I don't know exactly how that worked before, but he looks older. He looks a little bit more rough around the edges and stuff. That's fine, but getting into his moveset, standard 100-hand slap, sumo headbutt, sumo smash, ocho throw, all those things are back. Then he has his 2 V skills from Street Fighter 5, the one where he charges up his 100 hands, and then the slap where you can negate fight. Yeah. And now he also has a new one called the sumo dash, where he basically kind of runs or moves forward. And it's like, okay, you've given Honda options to deal with fireballs and a bunch of other things. Like, that was one of the biggest problems with Honda in the past, is his moveset really actually left quite a bit to be desired for diversity. That's not the case anymore. He has a ton of options to throw at you, and you usually relied on your burst damage and defense with Honda in the past, and now it's like, okay, well, he's got all that stuff, like what is going to be his weaknesses? And that might be a thing.
Sumo dash sounds like a run a la Abigail or Hugo, right?
Yes.
Where he's marching towards you, and who knows how quickly, and then even that in and of itself is probably a mix-up, because he can either, go up or go forward or get armor or who knows. But they just gave that to Honda, and that goes again with they're changing these characters. Blanka has a doll that he throws on the ground as a trap now. Honda has a run. Dhalsim has, well, like we talked about, and maybe Ken of all of these seems the least changed, but maybe not. I mean, we'll have to see how these actually apply, but just on the surface level here, these other 3 characters seem to have some pretty major alterations to the way they used to work, or I should say some additions into the way they used to work. But I have to wonder how much familiarity you're going to feel if you jump in as a Blanka player and play this Blanka, or you jump in as a Honda player and play this Honda.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think there's going to be quite a bit of familiarity in terms of, maybe not from Street Fighter 5 directly, but if you've played past games, like the moves that you want to use are probably going to be there, plus with some extra stuff on top of it. So if you're looking for, I know a lot of people complained about Ryu lacking his donkey kick in some of the previous games like Street Fighter 4. And they're like, where is that? I love that move. I want to be able to use that. It's, it's in this game. You're not probably going to find very many moves that they cut from the roster. It pretty much looks like most of them are going to be there. And actually, just one other thing too I want to mention while we're talking about the characters is the opening shot shows Ken's jacket, and on that jacket it says Eagle Shipping Company. Eagle is a Street Fighter 1 character, fights with the batons, and also in the Alpha game. And he is a fairly popular character. It kind of makes you wonder if he's going to make an appearance in this one. He's quite the interesting character. I know a lot of fans of Eagle out there. He's a very passionate amount of fans who love him, kind of thing. So yeah. Well, and so far so good, I would say. There's a lot of momentum here. This was more than I expected to get, especially on day 1 of Tokyo Game Show. There's apparently more on the way this week, so
excited for that. I'd love to hear from our lovely viewers which of these characters impressed you the most, is the most beautiful, and which one looks the worst. I actually think it's Honda for me. Blanka has issues, but like Blanka's kind of supposed to look that way. Honda is I'm kind of the most apathetic to in terms of his visuals, but I'm not upset with any of them. And these characters as launch roster as opposed to DLC, I kind of like that too. These characters were DLC last time, and I was like, But yeah, it's cool that this roster is shaping up. This is what, 8 now that we have. Mm-hmm. And yeah, exciting times for Street Fighter. So yeah, let us know what you think of all of this so far. And did you have anything else you wanted to tell the people?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it is nice to have Blanka and Honda back on that launch roster. The games, the games where they're not there from the get-go, they do feel a little bit like they're lacking in some respects, and it's just really nice to see them again. So yeah, it's just pretty cool. And actually, we messed up our count there. It's not 8. It's 11. We've got 11 characters already. We're already losing track of it. So
I don't know. I'm a languager, not so much a math guy. So.
But yeah, that's the main thing. Is like it feels nice for these characters to be back. Like it feels more like Street Fighter. And overall, I would say this game feels momentum-wise far more like Street Fighter 4 in terms of the hype and anticipation that's been building up than it did like Street Fighter 5. So it feels like Street Fighter is really legitimately back again. And man, it's been a long time.